Kia ora. Again, I'm still left hanging with those students who didn't show up. You're welcome to watch it at home, but I guess I'd point out you can't ask me questions when you're at home, unless you're watching right now, at which point you can say something, and if I happen to look down the screen, I might be able to answer your question. But I'm predicting you're not watching this at home, so we'll just carry on. So I think that even though you were here, I will just go over the labour market again. And if we've got time, we can almost have a look at how it links to aggregate demand, aggregate supply. It's 3 o'clock, so I don't know that we'll have time. So the labour market model, if we just have a look in the middle, this is a full labour market model. I've got quite a lot of detail here. So just to point out, this is the labour market for New Zealand. So this will be looking at all the supply of labour and all the demand for labour for like every single job occupation. Right, so it's very general and it doesn't look at specific occupations. What I've done here on either side is I've just shown you like what individual labour markets would look like. So this is the market for builders and I chose retail workers over here. Okay, so what I'll do is just do a bit of comparison. This is the general labour market, so I might just make a little red line here to separate it all. And what we see is on the horizontal axis, this is a market model, so therefore there should be a price, but the price of labour is wages. All right, and I've put real wages here. What that means is wages, W, divided by P. So what we're saying is we're taking the price level into account. So saying what is your wage worth in terms of what it can actually buy you. Real wages shows the purchasing power of your wage, what you earn. If there was no P, just W, then it would be nominal wages. It would not be adjusted for inflation. It wouldn't actually give you an actual estimate of what you can actually buy. You'd have to look at the inflation rate as well. Anywho, so just so you know, you can leave off the P, but I like to put in the P, especially if you learnt this now, to just account for inflation and make it real wages. All right, so down on the horizontal axis, we have the quantity of labour. So we do use Q, unlike in ADS, we use Y. So we use quantity of labour and we do QL. And what we have here is if you know the supply of labour, so it's upwards to the right, to the left, and it's called SL, the supply of labour. One thing to note, the supply of labour comes from households. So households supply the labour in an economy, and the demand for labour is firms. So firms demand labour to produce products. It's a little bit of a twisty one that several people get a bit confused with, but supply of labour households and demand for labour firms. And it becomes vertical in the long run. So most labour markets models show you this, because in the long run, there is a fixed amount of labour that can be supplied. There is only so many people in the population at any one time. So once you've got all those people employed, and actually this is the labour market, some of those people are in hospital, some of them are at school, some of them are in prison. Not everybody is in the labour force. They might be old enough to work, but they're actually not available for working. So this only includes people who are actually available for work and can work, okay? So it's kind of simplifying it. So it becomes vertical, and that's why I draw a line down and I call it QF, because I'm saying this is the quantity of labour, that's the full quantity you could actually ever hire in this market. All right, so that's quite an important thing to have because it's particularly useful when we look at what happens to unemployment. So what we've got here is where the demand for labour equals the supply for labour, we have equilibrium. And you might see an E, I've left it off just because I can. But W over P here is at the equilibrium point of supply of labour and demand of labour, and that is the quantity. So that would be if the market was allowed to decide what you get paid per hour, and that QL would be how many people would actually be employed. But what happens in a lot of countries like New Zealand is that we feel that this wage rate is too low, and it's too low for families to afford a decent level of quality of life. So people should actually be paid more, and we put in place a minimum wage. All right, if I just pop over here to the retail workers market, this is the same market, but it's only looking at people who are retail workers. So it's just a small market, well, it's excluding all the other occupations. And what we see here is the equilibrium position of supply and demand is quite low, and it means that wages in this market would be quite low. And why is that? Well, if you think about retail workers, you don't have to have a qualification to work in a supermarket and shops and stuff like that. You might have one, but it's not necessarily crucial. So it tends to attract entry-level people, like people with no qualifications, no experience, low education, and that's why the wage is quite low. So we have a minimum wage in place because we as a country have decided that we don't want the market to decide what people are paid. That is what we want them to be paid. So it's $17. I feel like saying $17.70 as of Monday. It's just increased. So that's the minimum that you're allowed to pay someone. So it's a price control, a minimum price control, a price floor. It's not allowed to go down. So it's a legal price set above the market price, and it's not allowed to be decreased. You have to at least pay this. So that's really a nice thing for society to do, and there's a lot of reasons why we believe that we should have a minimum wage, right? The key idea that that's not equitable to pay someone that. There are other ways you can go about, though, making sure people get paid a decent amount. That's not so much a topic for now. So what a minimum wage does, though, is that's the quantity that's currently employed at WP. If you impose a minimum wage and it'll be above the equilibrium, it's going to do this. It's going to increase the market price to W over P min. And as a result, you're going to see, let's start here, just to be different, an increase in the quantity supplied of labour. So what we're saying before is that QF is the full amount of labour that can be employed, and QL is the current level of employment in this market. The difference is people who choose not to work at W over P. They are holding out, so the difference here, I'll do it a nice blue, voluntary unemployment, right? Voluntary UE unemployment. So the idea is that they are choosing not to work at QL because they feel that they're worth more and or what they're currently doing, so they're not working, they're at home or whatever, is more valuable to them to what they get paid here. So the opportunity cost of not working is low. But then if the wage increases to W over P min, the opportunity cost of not working increases. So the quantity supplied of labour increases to here, from here to here. And so what we have is that the gap between QF and QSL is voluntary UE, it's now got smaller. There are less people voluntarily unemployed because now more people want to supply their labour at WP min because it's higher and they think it's more worthwhile. The opportunity cost of not working has increased. So I'll just put that here. QSL increases, all right, from QL, all right, because opportunity cost of not working has increased. So minimum wage. Okay. Then on the other side of the scenario, we have the quantity demanded of labour has fallen. It's fallen from QL, when supply equal demand, to QDL here. And that's because when the wage rate increases, that increases a firm's cost of production. So the QDL decreases from QL because the cost of production has increased. You're having to pay your workers more, this, not this, and yet there's been no change in the final demand for your product. We've heard nothing about your workers being more productive. So therefore for you, your labour is derived demand. It comes from the productivity or the product they produce. You therefore are less willing to take on workers at WP min. So we have a fall in quantity demanded because the price effectively has changed here from QL to QDL. Right? And what that means is that we have a surplus of labour here, difference between QSL and QDL, so I'll call it a surplus or excess supply, and that actually has a name here. It's unemployment, but it's called involuntary unemployment. And the idea is that these people, some of them actually had a job before, they were actually employed at QL, but now there's increased competition as some more of these people who were previously voluntarily unemployed have entered the market. And so people who were previously employed have lost their job, and then you've got people who are voluntarily unemployed who haven't found a job. So there's a lot of competition in the market because you now have a surplus. So therefore, you have involuntary unemployment. They would work, but there is no demand for their labour at that price or that wage. Right? So involuntary unemployment basically means that you have a surplus of labour where people are prepared to work at WP min, but there is no demand for labour at that wage. Normally, a surplus would drive down prices or wages in this instance, but it's a legal price, so it's not allowed to fall. So therefore, we have involuntary unemployment. And as a result, the quantity employed in the market actually decreases from QL to 0, quantity employed, to QDL minus 0. You can only employ those who are wanted. So now this is the new quantity employed, and I'll just call it like that. Right? You can do A, B, C, D or something to make it easier, especially when you have a small model. So what do we see? The labour market model, all right? This is a general labour market model. And we just showed you an equilibrium wage and quantity employed. And then if you put a minimum wage, what happens? It decreases the amount employed and it creates involuntary unemployment. I'm not going to show it now. Maybe if you're lucky, I'll show it later. But if you increase the minimum wage further, what's that going to do? It's just going to increase involuntary unemployment further. And it's going to reduce the amount employed even further. And it's going to reduce the amount voluntarily unemployed as well. But just have a look here. And the retail workers, as I said, their wage rate, if it was left by the market side, it would be quite low. It would be below the minimum wage. So that's why we have minimum wage for workers who are in positions where it's low skilled, it's kind of no qualifications required, easy to get into, and the market determines that they get paid less because generally there's quite a lot of people that can go into that role. So we think that equitably they should get paid more so they can have a decent standard of living. But if you ever look over here, I chose builders. I could have chosen anyone. I'm not saying, well, I mean, whether you think builders are high skilled or not is up to you. I think actually they are. You have to get qualified. You have to get a lot of experience and skill in terms of building. I haven't shown the minimum wage here at all because what I've tried to show is that there is such demand for builders particularly. The demand is really, really high for builders, especially right now. And there actually isn't enough builders, so there's massive shortages of builders. So what actually we have is a really high wage in that market. I don't know what they get paid. I guess like $50 an hour, all right, as opposed to $17.70. The minimum wage is irrelevant. We don't need a minimum wage here. We wouldn't need it because it would actually be below the equilibrium, and that's like a maximum price. So it's unnecessary. And that's because of the idea that there's a shortage. There's not a huge amount of builders, restricted supply. There's high demand for this particular occupation. There are some, you have to be able to build, you have to usually have qualifications, you've done an apprenticeship, that type of thing. So the wage rate is a lot higher. So there's no need for a minimum wage. But that's a specific job market. This is the general labour market model in New Zealand. Okay, so I hope that's helped. And I recommend that you go back to your workbook to have a look on, what causes demand for labour to increase or decrease and how that affects the quantity employed, the amount unemployed, etc. But I'd say key thing, there is no involuntary unemployment until you put a minimum wage in. However, this is New Zealand, every market has a minimum that workers must get paid. It's just, in some markets it's relevant, low skill, entry level, lots of people available. And other markets where either, you've got shortages, high demand, or it's really skilled, like doctors and stuff, you don't need a minimum to pay people because they already, the equilibrium position for the market would be well above the equilibrium. So, hope you've enjoyed it. Feel free to tell your friends if they need a bit of help. And if you book a tutorial, come along. I was actually in a meeting. I was coming. Thanks.